Today we're going to be building a custom exhaust system for the 2nd Gen Cyclone project, and it's going to be the most complicated, time-consuming, best performing, and best sounding exhaust system that I have built to date. Now, it's all going to be installed in this, which is basically a 98 Chevy S10, which has a 5.3 naturally aspirated V8 under the hood, which it might be a little bit overkill for what the truck is going to do right now, which is maybe 400 horsepower. But before this project is done, it's going to have an 800 or 900 horsepower supercharged LS under the hood, which is, by the way, way cooler than any turbo V6 you could put in a Cyclone. So I want an exhaust system that's going to work great now as well as in the future, and it still has to do all those things: perform, sound good, fit, go around the 3-link, and all that stuff. So I have a couple of bottles of argon on standby. I've got a whole box of 3-inch stainless steel material. I have a grand total of 3 separate mufflers, a bunch of V-bands, and a whole bunch of time on my hands. So let's jump right in. All right, first thing we're gonna do, just weld this reducer on. Goes from 2.5 at the collector up to the 3-inch at the exhaust that the whole system will be made from. I want this to be perfect because this a tiny bit off on that one joint makes a huge difference on the other end. So I've got the passenger side intermediate pipe 100% done, and we are ready to put it in. And if you had noticed, I actually took the torsion bars out in order to get this in and out in one piece, and that's mainly because I have welded this hanger onto the pipe right here. I think I told you guys about this last time. I initially wondered maybe I should put a V-band in the middle here, but just it was a little bit too close to the torsion bars, so it only takes like 10 minutes to take the torsion bars out. And the good thing is, long term, I'm actually going to be doing coilovers up front on this truck anyway, so it's not great, but it doesn't bother me all that much. All right, let's cut the length. Let's put our V-band on. Do one last double check, and we will weld it up for good. Look at that.
It looked really good.
So we got the middle pipe pretty much done. I'm just going to weld it into the muffler, and I always do this step in the vehicle because, you know, just a little bit of misalignment could make a huge difference. So get this tack welded, we'll pull it out, and we'll finish weld it. I really hope I like this muffler, because it's getting welded in for good. So we're making pretty good progress on the exhaust system, and I just ran into a bit of a roadblock, and not a huge deal, just adds a little bit more time to the project, but it gives me an opportunity to stand on my soapbox and preach to you guys, which you love or don't love hearing. But anyway, the lesson for the day is do the right thing, do the hard thing, and do it to the very best of your abilities. I don't care if you're talking about building exhaust, building a house, or any part of your life. Do the best that you can every single time. Don't accept shortcuts, even if it's buried up underneath the bottom side of a truck and nobody in the world is going to see it except you. So let me illustrate the point and show you why I'm even talking about this, because it's on my mind. So I'm working on this pipe that comes out of the muffler on the driver's side, and it'll meet up with this piece right here. So we're almost done, but there's two reasons why this is not really, in my mind, an acceptable solution. Number one, if you look at the heat shield above the exhaust, it might be kind of hard to see, but it's a little bit higher on the outside. It comes down and then it goes horizontal again. So basically when the exhaust pipe sits level with the passenger side, it's going to hit the floor. There's like zero clearance there. And then number two, the other problem is, even though I do not like this nice kind of parallel shot, I want the V-bands to be lined up with one another. If I did that here, they would be so close to one another we wouldn't be able to have room to get the clamps on and off. Now there's a couple different ways we could solve that. I mean, I could just take a big old hammer and smash the floorboard up. Don't like that idea. We could take the pipes and like bend them apart from one another to get room for the V-bands. Also don't like that idea. And there's probably 7 different ways you could solve that problem with just a straight shot of pipe. But this is my solution. So instead of a straight shot, I took a couple of bends and I made this little offset jog so it comes out of the muffler heading forward, goes down and inward just a little bit, so it spreads the pipes further apart and it clears the floorboard, and then it runs further ahead and has to jog back up and over the cross member, leaving us plenty of room between the V-bands, plenty of room to clear the cross members on the bottom side of the pipe, clears the floorboard and all that. So yeah, this did take probably another 2 hours out of my day to get it mocked up. I still haven't even finished welded it, but to me, it's just, it would not be worth it to take that shortcut. I don't care if I have a YouTube channel or not. This is the way that I think everyone should do stuff. Do it as, even though it's the hard way, do it the right way, or to the very best of your ability, I guess I should say. So that's my soapbox. Thanks for listening. Let's get back to the project. All right, this is what I came up with to go from the V-band to the pipe that goes to the front of the truck. So just 2 more seams to weld, then we will weld this in place, and our exhaust, phase 1 of the exhaust is done. Until we try the other mufflers. What do you guys pay for argon in your area? We just had an 80 cubic foot bottle filled for $89. I think the 125s are normally like 140, 150 or so. Kind of curious if it varies across the country. Okay, so we're getting very close to the end of this exhaust project, and in like real labor hours, from the time that I started the flanges to the point to where this first phase of the system is done. I haven't even touched the tailpipes yet, but this first phase of the system, it is the most challenging, but I'm at about a week's worth of labor to get to this point. Now, there's a lot of different ways we could have done this. We could have done single 3-inch, which would have been a lot easier. Dual 2.5 would have been a lot easier. I mean, it's pretty tight clearances underneath this truck and a lot of obstacles to kind of snake our way around, but I'm really happy with how it's turning out. So I have the last like major chunk fully welded together. That's the driver's side pipe. And now all I've got to do is, with it in the truck, I got to adjust that slightly. I will weld that joint. I will weld it into the muffler. Then I'll take the whole thing out and finish weld it on the table. I do have one more hanger to add based on those 2 bolts right there. I'm going to have a hanger somewhere right up in there. But then we are pretty much ready to fire this thing up and hear how it sounds with dual 3-inch going into the Hooker Blackheart. So I definitely think we're going to have to add a little more mufflers to the system later on, but we planned for that. But for phase one, it's rowdy, and I like it. So in real time, I actually finished up the first half of the exhaust about 2 weeks ago, and I'm still waiting on the radiator. It's over the holiday break right now, in between Christmas and New Year's, so it's just kind of a weird time. And I'm getting impatient, so I want to see what the truck might sound like with the full exhaust that I had planned. Initially, I was going to run the Hooker Blackheart muffler just as stage one, and if you recall, it sounds like this. But my long-term goal was to have two Flowmaster Pro Series shorty mufflers mounted behind the axle in conjunction with the Hooker Blackheart muffler as sort of a resonator. So that's going to be a lot more work to get the mufflers mounted behind the axle. So before I do it, I just want to make sure I actually like how it's going to sound. So I got some muffler clamps and a little bit of pipe mocked up so we can actually start this thing up and hear how it's going to sound. We have the muffler on the driver's side mounted on a bit of an extension pipe because to cross over behind the axle, that'll kind of best represent how it's going to, how it's kind of going to flow. So let's hear how this thing's going to sound. I'll rev it a little bit because before it had that really raspy sound. I don't know, what do you think?
Almost like they went way quieter than it was.
Yeah?
It still has a little bit of the rasp, but it did tone it down quite a bit.
I don't know. It's not as conclusive as I would have thought. Maybe I just need to drive it at first and see before I commit to the full.
Yeah, well, I'm sure dumped it's going to sound different than if you have it all the way out the back. It's going to have that resonance into the bed.
Yeah. Because the other option is get rid of the muffler in the middle and have just these two on the back.
Right, those would actually be, that seems like they do a lot more than I thought they would for the size.
Mm-hmm.
3 days later.
Okay, so I might be getting just a little bit carried away with this whole exhaust project, but I'm really excited to show you guys what I just came up with. I've actually been building this for about a day and a half, and I'm drawing inspiration from Corvettes. I'm not doing the 4-tip thing, but I just like how the Corvette mufflers, like on a C5 especially, sit behind, or like in front of the rear bumper, two mufflers side by side. I liked the sound enough where I just committed and said, let's go put these Flowmaster Pro Series shorties back kind of where the spare tire would sit on the S10. And yeah, lo and behold, this is what I've come up with. And like I said, overkill, maybe, carried away, probably, but we've got the two mufflers, I've got the turn down, it's gonna sit tucked up nicely. I've been building these little hanger reinforcement pads on all the exhaust systems that I've been doing lately, so that'll maybe give it a little more strength, I don't know, in my mind it does. I've got these two braces here that just hold the muffler, or the two mufflers kind of in parallel. Another little hanger mount over here. And then on this one, I built a little, I don't know, I just put a little diamond on there because I figured what the heck, I don't know, looks kind of neat. So we do need a place to hang this though, because back on the rear of the S10, there's not a whole lot of cross members available. So you've got this guy here, which I am going to build the front mount kind of in the center-ish here, but back in this area, I didn't want to use the bed, so I built a cross member that uses this factory hole and that rearmost bed hole on each side. You can't see that when the light's blowing it out, but boom, there it is. Paint is drying, so we'll throw it in just a second, but we've got the two little spots where it's going to bolt to the frame. I've got the hangers already welded on. I've measured the height, and so yeah, I got a little bit carried away, but let's get this thing thrown in and see what it looks like. Now, the paint on this is not 1000% dry yet, but I'm just really excited to put it up in place and see how it looks. You have to do a little bit of Tetris to get it in, but it fits. Oh, don't scratch it. Just going to bungee the front until we get our hanger built, but that'll locate the back exactly where we want it. Oh, now fingers crossed, this fits. So now that we have the rear section done, the middle section done, all I got to do is build the pipe that goes from the first muffler into the second muffler. And I do need one disconnect point, so I'm going to just put some V-bands on a little extension. So I'll go muffler, short pipe with a hanger, V-band, and then tailpipe. They're into muffler pipe. So get these tacked in place. Okay, so there's exactly 1 inch of gap between the pipes, which will be represented by this socket. So that's how it's going to sit in the car. And I just want to make sure I can get the clamp sort of around it, which it looks like we can do that with no problem. But just out of curiosity, these were the same height. Yeah, maybe you could snake it in there, but actually no, there's no way that would work. So that's why we got to do it like that. It gives us enough room to snake it in there. Cool. Now we just got to weld them up. Oh, I wish I had a welding positioner. That is what I truly, really need. All right, one thing you guys might have noticed I've been doing is just taking this fine wire wheel and going over all the welds right after I do them. It's actually really effective while they're still sort of kind of warm, and it just takes off that outside layer, the heat affected zone. There's some extra oxides there, I think. That's going to be a greater chance of corrosion, even though this is stainless steel. So just by cleaning them up, it makes it last longer. And I think it looks a little bit neater having just a perfectly clean, shiny surface. All right, so this is another one of those steps that's completely unnecessary, but you should do it anyway because it makes for a much nicer finished product. Where I attach these hangers to the exhaust everywhere, I'm adding these little 2x2 inch pads, I guess you call them. So I'll weld the hanger to the pad, then the pad to the pipe because it's gonna make it stronger, I think. But you should do it. So as per usual, this turned into one of those projects that winds up taking way more time than you initially thought. But I don't care how much time it takes, because as I am constantly preaching to you guys, I'm gonna do this to the very best of my abilities. Not saying that my abilities are better or worse than anybody else's out there, but I am just putting 100% in every single time I build something. So yeah, the side effect of that is it definitely takes a little bit longer. But I'm constantly preaching that to you guys, and pardon the expression, because if you half-ass something, you're just never gonna get your abilities to where you want them to be. Anyway, here's what we've got. Middle section of the exhaust, which was kind of already done, is now 100% done. We have our V-bands welded on the back, staggered so the clamps can go on and off even though the pipes are fairly close to one another. And another thing that I'm gonna do, take advantage of these V-bands, I'm gonna build a second set of turn downs, just so if I'm like ever at the track or something like that, or if I really want this thing to sound a little bit louder or more aggressive, I can just pop 2 V-band clamps, take the whole back part of the system off, have it be a little bit louder, or if I'm feeling like I need to keep this thing in street mode, we'll just run the full exhaust. The only other thing that we did is we added this hanger here in front of the muffler, just because there is a hanger that's sitting on the frame with nothing to do, and we didn't want it to be lonely, so we gave that guy a job, and it's gonna hold up the middle of the system. Again, overkill, yeah, definitely, but why not? It's there. So the game of connect the dots is officially like 80% done. All the dots are mounted, the major components of the system. So now we can just slip the middle part of the exhaust back up underneath the truck. The rear half of the exhaust is sitting there patiently waiting, and now all we have to do is build 2 short sections of pipe to connect the 2 together. Now I'm trying to balance like work time with actual filming time, because I'm sure at this point, I haven't edited the video, but I'm sure this is just gonna be dragging on. But I went ahead and I got the hardest tailpipe section knocked out. That's the one that's gonna go into the driver's side muffler. We gotta leave clearance for the panhard bar as the suspension cycles. We gotta leave room for the differential. This guy here, it's a spacer that represents where the upper third link is gonna go. But we have that one fully mocked up and fully tacked into place. So I'll get this finished welded now, then I'll show you guys my process for connecting the dot from there to there, because we are getting so close. But I am, even though this is like a 3-week project, I am really, really happy with how it's turning out. Like a glove. All right, so I've kind of been breezing over it up until this point, and I know I've shown you this, guys, probably once or twice before, but my process for building exhaust and getting the gas where it needs to go. I got a whole bunch of these bends. These are mandrel bends. This is all from Summit Racing. It's their stainless builder's kit. I use mandrel bends because the diameter is always consistent throughout the bend, so you don't lose any flow. These are, of course, all stainless. I'll put a link down below for the builder's kit. But to get the angle that I want, I'm just gonna take this 90-degree bend right here, and the first thing coming out of the muffler, I need a 45 up, then I need to jog the 45 back, and I have a 90. So, chop it right down the middle, and we will get where we need to go. So first thing I'm going to do is just cut off these bell ends. They flare them out like this, so you can, slip them together and clamp them if you want. I don't like how they look, so cut everything off, and I'll butt weld it all. That didn't work. James, why'd you unplug me?
No,
Yeah, I bet you did.
not me.
Come on, James. All right. And I usually just end up eyeballing these. A 45 is pretty easy because it's half of a 90. By the way, I stole this marker from Matt. These Milwaukee markers actually work really good, so I'm gonna have to get some more, but thanks for the marker, Matt. All right. Oh, that's what it is. Except I need to space it back about that much to match up with the other one. Got it? Now I think this is going to be one of the last exhaust systems that I build using this method. Because there's a lot of tools. James, where'd your mark go? There it is. There's a lot of tools out there that I've been looking at for a long time that I really want to invest in, like some of those tacking clamps. They just go around here, you put a pair of vice grips on them and you can hold everything in place. Because right now all I'm using is masking tape sometimes. So I want to get some of those clamps. I'd love to get some of those jigs that they have where you put the mandrel bend in it, you can cut it at nice even increments. So a lot of tools that I'd love to buy, but even if you don't have the tools, if you take your time, you can still make it work. I think I've probably done 2 or 3 dozen exhausts this way, which is tiring, also known as exhausting. To get around the shock, I'm gonna need these to be, I don't want them to touch, but I want like minimal gap. So I've got like a 1/4 inch between the two. That should give me the room I need to make the bend around the shock here. I think this was the one. Would we decide this would work? Not that way. That way. Man, that is... James, we got lucky on that
Yeah,
one.
it looks nice.
I am good.
Yeah, very nice.
I'll take it. So this is a pretty significant moment because this right here is the last of many pieces to the exhaust, which I am going to count it to see how many bends we have in total, but I've already done the fit work, so I know it's going to do what I want. I just have to make my final alignment marks. Looking beautiful. And weld it in place. So 23 individual pieces on the driver's side. Well, 24 counting the tailpipe. And 21 pieces on the passenger side. So whatever that works out to be, like 45 individual pieces for this stinking exhaust. Whew. Okay, so I've got the last passenger side tailpipe section fully welded up. It's cooled down. So now all we got to do is put it back up under the truck, clamp it to the muffler. We'll get a couple of really good heavy tacks into the rear muffler section. It'll take the whole muffler and 2 tailpipe section out and do the last bit of finish welding. So we're so close. All right, we got one last shot to make any final adjustments. But otherwise, That is its permanent home. Look at that.
Yes, sir.
It's like race mode. Thank you, sir. Now, at its core function, exhaust system really only has one job to do. It just has to get the spent exhaust gases from the engine back to the tailpipe or wherever they're going to exit out into the atmosphere. But if you're a gearhead or a car nut like I am, an exhaust system is so much more than that because it has to serve several different purposes. Number one, it's got to give the vehicle a sound or a voice or a soul, something that we like. And even though I might like it, you guys might not like how this one sounds, but that's why I love exhaust, is because I can personalize it to my tastes. An exhaust system also has to be able to support the power level that we're after. An exhaust system has to go around all the obstacles, and this was definitely one of the most challenging, time-consuming, and probably best performing and best sounding exhaust systems that I have done in a very, very long time. So I'm going to brag on myself for a little bit. I'll just kind of give you guys the tour front to back to show you all of the obstacles that we had to overcome and just show you the whole system start to finish. So obviously, four-wheel drive, technically all-wheel drive, LS swapped S10. We won't go over the fab work required to do the engine swap, but we've got our crossover pipe that goes underneath the transmission. We've got to have plenty of ground clearance, tucked it up as far as we possibly could. We've got ourselves a wideband and narrowband O2 sensors. Got some factory hangers that we have over the cross members so nothing rubs. That one actually, that is a custom modified factory one. We go underneath the floorboard where the factory exhaust went, but you can see we had to contour the driver's side pipe just a little bit lower because of the way that the floorboard goes. Everything 100% TIG welded. Another factory hanger there, still working, doing its job. First muffler, dual 3-inch in, 3-inch out. That was the Hooker Blackheart, which is not technically a chambered muffler, but it does have an X pipe in the middle, a couple of V-bands. And this right here, this is my favorite view of the whole thing, where we have the dual 3-inch tailpipes that go up and over the axle. It clears our upper third link mount. It clears the coil over. We've got plenty of room for this suspension to work. And then once we get on the back side of the axle, we have our two 3-inch Flowmaster Pro Series shorty mufflers that we have mounted. Of course, there was no factory hangers back here, so we did have to make that cross member. But all told, this shot right here, this represents so much work because we have the custom suspension and the custom exhaust. And between the two of those, I wouldn't venture to guess how many hours I have spent behind the welding hood getting this truck done. And you call me crazy because from the outside, this is just a 98 Chevy S10 with Corvette wheels on it. But the beauty is more than skin deep because I love ugly, unassuming trucks that underneath, like we just saw, they have something special to them. So thank you guys so much for watching. I do appreciate it. We're getting so close on this project. I actually just got the radiator. Today's the 9th. I got the radiator yesterday, the 8th. And the radiator is like the very last piece of the puzzle. So next time, we're going to take this thing out on the road, do some initial test driving, start the tuning process, and then hopefully enjoy it. But in the meantime, I'm going to leave you guys with the sweet, sweet sounds of my most difficult, time-consuming, probably expensive, and best performing and best sounding exhaust system that I've built to date.